The icy blast from the AC seemed to tunnel right down my spine, chilling the thin, worn fabric of my cheap shirt. I shivered, my palms slick with cold sweat. At the far end of the long conference table, 3 interviewers stared back at me. The man on the left had a shiny bald spot that gleamed under the overhead lights, making me squint. He was frowning down at my resume, a faint hint of disdain playing on his lips. The woman in the middle wore perfectly applied makeup and a friendly smile, but her eyes held a surgical precision, dissecting me from the inside out. And the one on the right. My gaze snagged on her, and my heart gave a hard thump. Eleanor Vance, founder of Aegis Corporation, the youngest titan in the business world, known for her iron grip and an infamous Ice Queen demeanor. Rumor had it she fired people faster than she flipped pages, and anyone who messed up in front of her would experience career suicide. I never dreamed that an entry-level management trainee interview would bring out a living legend like her. I was screwed. The words slammed into my brain like a wrecking ball. Me, Ethan Reed, a guy who'd graduated straight into a pink slip, fired for poor performance, and then subtly blacklisted by a petty manager in an industry group chat. Today was probably the end of the road. Mr. Reed, Sarah Miller, the HR director in the middle, spoke up, her smile sweet. Your resume says you interned at your previous company for 3 months. Can you tell us about your biggest takeaway? The loaded question. What was I supposed to say? That my biggest takeaway was realizing the true face of corporate greed and the backstabbing nature of office politics? I took a deep breath, my mind racing, trying to concoct a shiny lie. Just then, a bizarre voice, completely alien to this room, exploded in my head. This kid actually looks pretty decent, but that shirt, it's pilling. So sad. Should I go easy on him later? No, Eleanor's here. I need to be professional. I froze, my gaze darting to the ever-smiling Sarah Miller. The voice. It came from her. What was this? Hallucinations? Before I could process it, another voice chimed in, laced with impatience. Another fresh-out-of-college newbie. His resume is as bare as my head. Just ask him a few questions and get him out of here. I need to call that hair clinic for a consultation. I looked at the bald HR manager on the left. He was pushing up his glasses with a grave expression, completely at odds with the thought I'd just heard. Could I hear people's thoughts? The absurd idea had barely formed when a voice as clear and cold as ice confirmed it. This batch of candidates is really subpar. Next, my body stiffened. I looked at Eleanor Vance at the end of the table. Her face was impassive as she leaned back in her chair, her fingertips tapping softly on the table, once, then again, each tap echoing in my chest. Her gaze wasn't on me, but out the window, yet the overwhelming pressure, the feeling of being kept 1,000 miles away, washed over me like a tide. I was done. She'd already sentenced me. Despair wrapped around my throat like a vine, making it almost impossible to breathe. In the adult world, not crumbling on the spot was considered a victory. Sarah Miller saw my prolonged silence, and her smile faded slightly. Mr. Reed. I opened my mouth, my throat too dry to speak. Give up, Ethan. She's clearly not impressed. Just as I was about to mumble something and excuse myself, Eleanor's icy inner voice rang out again. But this time, the content was drastically different. Damn it, did Midnight scratch the couch again? Forgot to lock the little menace in her kennel before I left. If that couch is ruined when I get home, all her catnip and wet food budget for the month is gone. Not a single cent. Pfft. I couldn't help it. A small chuckle escaped my lips. The entire conference room fell into instant silence. The bald HR manager frowned. Sarah Miller's smile vanished completely, and Eleanor Vance, her gaze, which had been drifting out the window, finally turned back, hitting me like 2 blades dipped in ice. What's so funny? Her voice was soft, but carried an undeniable authority. My scalp prickled. I knew I'd just made a monumental mistake. Laughing during an interview with the Queen of Aegis? What was the difference between that and pulling a hair from a tiger's mouth? Is this kid crazy? Laughing in my interview? Does he know the last person who did that is still digging ditches in some remote country? I flinched, my survival instincts kicking in. My brain went into overdrive, trying to come up with a plausible explanation in milliseconds. Got it. Meeting Eleanor's gaze, I forced a calm smile and said, trying to sound profound, "My apologies, Ms. Vance. I was simply struck by how When faced with a grand question like takeaways, any eloquent words feel somewhat disingenuous. I paused, watching their puzzled expressions, and continued to improvise. I was just thinking, if we compare a company to a delicate ecosystem, then every employee, even an intern, is a part of it. We often encounter seemingly troublesome, yet actually destructive, ecosystem members who might scratch the couch, or rather, damage the company's core interests. The words midnight and couch rolled off my tongue, my palms sweating with nerves. Eleanor's eyebrow twitched almost imperceptibly. The bald manager and Sarah Miller looked bewildered, clearly not following my crazy talk. I steeled myself and pressed on. In such situations, many would choose immediate punishment like cutting off the catnip budget, meaning slashing budgets or outright firing. But that's not the optimal solution. I believe the true takeaway is learning how to anticipate risks. Before midnight causes damage, you should put her in a kennel, establishing robust risk prevention protocols. It's better to be forewarned than to be sorry. That, Ms. Vance, is my biggest takeaway from those 3 months, a fundamental understanding of risk control. I finished. The conference room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. I felt like a total idiot, turning the CEO's private cat troubles into a business case study. All I wanted was to find a hole to crawl into and then flee the city under the cover of night. How did he know about midnight? Eleanor's inner voice held a note of bewildered surprise. No, impossible. It's just a coincidence. But his analogy for risk control is actually quite clever, comparing saboteurs to cats and core interests to a couch. It's certainly innovative. The bald HR manager stroked his shiny scalp, his mind filled with praise. Holy cow, this kid's got something. Elevating an intern's job to a philosophical level of risk control? What kind of talent is this? I actually thought he was useless a moment ago. My hair clinic consultation clearly isn't as important as his future. Sarah Miller's eyes, meanwhile, were practically sparkling. Oh my God, is this a genius? Seemingly absurd, yet he's articulated the essence of management in one fell swoop. No, we have to hire this guy. Eleanor must be thinking the same thing. Me? Wait, what? Are your brains broken? I was clearly just making things up. Eleanor's finger stopped tapping. She leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine curiosity appeared in her cold eyes. Intriguing. So, Ethan, she used my first name? Next question. What do you believe is Aegis Corporation's biggest challenge right now? Another trap. If I answered too well, it would sound like theoretical nonsense. If I answered poorly, it would expose my lack of ability. Cold sweat trickled down my back, my mind a blank. My mind reading, help me out here. Give me a hint. Eleanor's face was as still as water, but her inner thoughts were like a wild horse. Ugh, what am I eating for lunch? I'm sick of the spicy stir-fry in the cafeteria, and that Japanese place across the street is too far. Maybe I should have a new guy. Ethan, right? If he gets hired, I'll send him to get that trendy ramen from the place downtown. No, I can't break character. I'm the Ice Queen, above such earthly desires. Me? Seriously, Mom, what are you thinking? Your company is facing its biggest challenge, and you're still thinking about ramen. Where's your professional dedication? Seeing Eleanor's I am very professional face, and hearing her internal battle over extra spice, extra stink, or maybe an egg for a ramen, I felt an unprecedented sense of disconnect. The bald HR manager's inner voice piped up. This question is a true test. Aegis is at its peak. What major challenges could there be? She's testing his vision and perspective. Sarah Miller. Eleanor is brilliant. This question instantly weeds out all the sycophantic mediocrities. Ethan, go for it. You have to give an earth-shattering answer. I wanted to cry. I had no earth-shattering answer. All I had was a boss who wanted trendy ramen. Wait, ramen. A crazy idea began to form in my mind. I cleared my throat, met their 3 expectant gazes, and slowly began. I believe Aegis Corporation's biggest challenge doesn't come from external market competition, nor from internal management issues. I paused deliberately, creating an aura of profound mystery. It's the spicy fusion challenge. As soon as the words left my mouth, the expressions of the bald HR manager and Sarah Miller froze, as if they'd just heard something utterly outlandish. Spicy fusion? What the hell is that? The bald manager's mind was a flurry of question marks. It's over, it's over. He really has lost it after all. Sarah Miller looked heartbroken. Eleanor Vance's reaction, however, was completely different. Her pupils sharply contracted, and for the first time, a crack appeared in her perpetually icy facade. He knew again. I just thought that. Who is this guy? Is he a corporate spy? No, what spy would use spicy fusion ramen as an entry point? Seeing her reaction, I knew I'd hit the jackpot. Suppressing my inner delight and nervousness, I continued to solemnly ramble. Ms. Vance, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to explain. The spicy fusion here doesn't refer to the food itself, but a code name. It represents those strongly flavored, highly controversial, yet possessing a massive and loyal following emerging markets or products. I glanced at Eleanor. Her expression had shifted from shock to deep contemplation. Aegis Corporation is a corporate behemoth with mature and high-end product lines, like a Michelin-starred restaurant. We're accustomed to cooking exquisite steaks and caviar, but we often overlook those spicy fusion joints hidden in alleyways, seemingly unsophisticated, yet possessing astonishing vitality. These emerging markets might initially stink to high heaven, meaning they're not favored by the mainstream, and might even draw criticism. But once they explode, their user stickiness and market penetration will far exceed our imagination. My point is, Aegis Corporation's biggest challenge is how to humble itself and embrace these spicy fusions. Do we choose to scoff, cling to our high-end positioning, and ultimately be left behind by the times? Or do we bravely hold our noses and try them, refine them, and turn them into a feast fit for the grandest stage? This tests the corporation's courage, vision, and innovative spirit. I finished, letting out a long breath. The entire conference room was dead silent. The bald HR manager's mouth hung open, and the pen in his hand clattered onto the table. He looked at me with an expression of awe, as if I were some kind of business deity. Unbelievable. This guy is absolutely unbelievable. Explaining corporate strategy in such a clear, concise, and soul-stirring way. What is the Spicy Fusion Challenge? This is the best business concept of the year. I need to write this down immediately and use it in the next meeting. Sarah Miller's cheeks were flushed with excitement. She looked at Eleanor, her inner voice surging with enthusiasm. Eleanor, a true prodigy has descended upon us. We not only need to hire this man, but we need to do it immediately. Give him the highest level of compensation. He's the one who can lead Aegis Corporation to new heights of glory. Eleanor, meanwhile, simply gazed at me, her expression incredibly complex. There was shock, admiration, but even more, a deep, unfathomable scrutiny. Who exactly is he? Coincidence? Once is a coincidence, twice. Is it still a coincidence? He seems to see through everything about me, even my most private thoughts. This feeling, it's dangerous, but his talent is undeniable. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice carrying a hint of imperceptible hoarseness. Ethan, she used my first name for the first time. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 9. The next day, standing outside the CEO's office on the top floor of Aegis Tower, I felt like I was dreaming. Me, Ethan Reed, a guy who was nearly selling trinkets at a flea market, had become executive assistant to the CEO. The leap was so huge, it was more absurd than stepping from my bed directly into the Pacific Ocean. The culprit behind all this was my unreliable mind-reading ability, which seemed to have a mind of its own. It wasn't as cool as it was in novels, where you could hear everyone's thoughts and effortlessly strategize. No, my mind reading was highly selective. It only let me hear the most ridiculous, most absurd, most irrelevant thoughts in a target's head within a 30-foot radius. Like yesterday, Eleanor was contemplating company strategy, and I heard about her personal vendetta with her cat. It was truly the budget-friendly, knockoff version of mind reading, stripped down to its most useless features. I straightened my brand-new suit, bought with a special wardrobe allowance approved by Director Miller, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. Come in. Still that cool, clear voice. I pushed the door open and saw Eleanor sitting by the massive floor-to-ceiling window. The morning light cast a golden halo around her, adding an almost ethereal sanctity to her already stunning face. Of course, that's if I could ignore the background noise in my head. Damn it, the fantasy drama I was binging last night went on hiatus again. When is the male lead finally going to get rid of that conniving second female lead? It's infuriating. I'm in a bad mood today, so whoever pisses me off is fired. Me? I silently retracted the left foot I was about to step forward with. Today looked like a high-risk workday. Good morning, Ms. Vance. I am Ethan Reet. I kept my head down, tried to minimize my presence. Eleanor lifted her eyelids, her gaze lingering on me for 2 seconds. You cleaned up nice in that new suit. But that tie's crooked, it's killing my OCD. I instinctively reached up to adjust my tie. Eleanor's eyes narrowed instantly. You knew again? My heart sank. I mentally cursed myself for being so obvious. Ms. Vance, what can I do for you? I quickly changed the subject. Eleanor withdrew her gaze and pointed to a stack of files on her desk. Read through all of these. I'll need a summary in half an hour. I looked at the mountain of files and felt my vision go dark. Half an hour? Even an octa-core processor couldn't do that. Let's see you pull a trick now. You got lucky twice yesterday, but today you'll learn that being an executive assistant isn't just about clever words. Eleanor's inner voice was filled with a smug, let's see what you do now attitude. I understood. This was a test, a power move. I carried the files, almost in tears, and sat down at the adjacent desk. Opening the first file, I was met with dense financial statements and market analyses. My head began to ache. Half an hour. It was impossible. I was frantic like a cat on a hot tin roof, while Eleanor leisurely picked up her coffee cup. She took a small sip, and her brow instantly furrowed. Black, what is this garbage? What coffee beans did the admin department buy? It tastes like bitter medicine. It's not even as good as that mind-blowing pour-over place around the corner downstairs. No. Maintain character. Maintain character. I'm the ice queen. She impassively set down the cup and said to me, the coffee's good. Me? Ma'am, can your face and your mind please get on the same page? An opportunity. I put down the files, stood up, and with a touch of apology, said, Ms. Vance, I believe that before I start working, I need a cup of coffee that can unleash my full potential. The coffee here seems to be missing a certain soul. Eleanor raised an eyebrow, her inner voice practically screaming, He's here. He's here. He's back with his cryptic theories. I want to see how he connects coffee to work potential this time. I smiled faintly, confidently saying, a good cup of coffee, like a good strategy, lies in its pour-over. It requires precise temperature, grind, and the brewer's complete focus. This represents our attitude towards work, concentration, excellence, the pursuit of perfection. I happen to know a place where their pour-over coffee can truly be. Mind-blowing. I almost said Eleanor, but quickly corrected myself. Can instantly put one into optimal work mode. Eleanor was utterly stunned. She stared at me as if I were some kind of monster. He even knows about mind-blowing? I've only been to that place twice, and I was disguised. Who's this guy? Is he a super stalker? No, I don't even have super stalkers. Ms. Vance, please give me 10 minutes. I didn't give her a chance to continue overthinking, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. Wait, Eleanor called out. My heart tightened. I thought she was about to explode. Instead, she pulled a black card from her wallet and tossed it onto the desk. Be quick. I want an iced Americano, light on the sugar, no ice. Good thing he's smart. If he gets it wrong, he's dead. I grabbed the black card and rushed out of the office as if fleeing for my life. 10 minutes later, I breathlessly placed a perfect iced Americano in front of Eleanor. The temperature, the sweetness, everything was exactly to her liking. Eleanor took a sip, and for a fleeting moment, a flicker of satisfaction appeared in her cold eyes. Though it was brief, I caught it. Tastes good. He passed that test. But those files, let's see what he does with those. I looked at the stack of files and took a deep breath. Now that I'd appeased the queen, it was time to deal with her royal decrees. I sat back down, ready to bite the bullet and start reading. Suddenly, I heard the inner voice of David Peterson, the bald HR manager who is now my direct superior. He was passing by the doorway, carrying a teacup. Man, poor Ethan. First day, and Eleanor's already putting him through the ringer like this. Those files? They're just old, archived documents from last quarter. Eleanor just wants to scare him. The real core data is on Eleanor's computer in the D drive in the learning materials folder. Ah, young man, good luck. Me? I shot my head up, looking at Eleanor's computer. D drive? Learning materials. What kind of folder name was that? I glanced at Eleanor. She was pretending to be engrossed in her files, but her peripheral vision kept darting my way, clearly waiting for me to mess up. I understood. I stood up and walked to Eleanor's desk. Ms. Vance. She didn't look up. I believe these paper files are overly redundant and outdated. To understand the company's current status, we should start from the most core and up-to-date data source, I said, with righteous conviction. Eleanor looked up, intrigued. Oh, and where would that source be? Keep pretending. She scoffed internally. I extended my finger and pointed decisively at her computer tower. On your computer, if I'm not mistaken, it should be in the D drive, in a folder named Learning Materials. Clank! Eleanor's coffee cup clattered heavily onto the desk, spilling coffee and wetting a document in front of her. But she didn't even notice. Her eyes wide, she stared at me, her icy face filled with astonishment and a hint of imperceptible panic. He knew that too. No way. This is my private computer. Did he hack my computer? No. When would he have had the chance? Is he a demon? The air in the office seemed to freeze. Watching her shocked expression, I felt a surge of triumph. Take that for trying to play mind games with me. Ms. Vance, I was merely using logical deduction. I launched into my specialty, confident bluffing. An efficient leader would naturally keep their most important and confidential files in the most accessible location. And the D drive on a computer is typically considered one's private domain. As for the name, Learning Materials, it's a clever form of reverse encryption, leveraging people's habitual thinking that the most dangerous place is the safest place. Am I right, Ms. Vance? Eleanor's lips moved, but no words came out. Her internal monologue was going wild. Reverse encryption? Habitual thinking? I just randomly created that folder. I wasn't thinking that deep. What kind of mind does this guy have? He not only guessed it, but he even came up with a perfectly plausible explanation for me. He's a genius who can see through everything. It's terrifying, but it's also incredibly exhilarating. I saw that the way Eleanor looked at me had shifted from initial scrutiny and curiosity to a complex mix of apprehension, admiration, and even a hint of fervent excitement. I knew that from today on, my days at Aegis Corporation were probably going to be anything but peaceful. My hunch was correct. Ever since the Learning Materials folder incident, Eleanor's gaze toward me had completely changed. She no longer scrutinized me with a "why aren't you fired yet?" look, but replaced it with a "what other surprises are hiding in your brain?" kind of probing. She started giving me genuinely tricky assignments. For example, a proposal that had been sitting for 6 months concerning the acquisition of a failing game company. You have one day. Give me a feasibility report. Eleanor tossed a thick stack of documents onto my desk, her tone flat, but her inner thoughts were brutally honest. This mess, the marketing and investment departments have been fighting over it for 3 months with no results. One says it has potential. The other says it's a money pit. Perfect. Let him try. If he can solve it, it proves he's not just lucky. If he can't, then he'll learn that merely being clever isn't enough. I hugged the documents, feeling like I was holding a ticking time bomb. A game company? I could barely understand how to play Candy Crush. I spent the entire morning tearing through the documents, my head spinning. This company, named Phantom Play, had a hit game years ago, but after that, it went downhill fast. Now it was deep in debt, barely clinging to life. The marketing department believed it had IP value and could be revitalized. The investment department, however, thought its technology and team were outdated, and acquiring it would be throwing money into a black hole. Both sides had valid points. How was an outsider like me supposed to decide? Just as I was at my wit's end, Director Miller sashayed in, carrying 2 bubble teas. "Ethan, you're working so hard." She placed one on my desk, her smile sweet. Eleanor's just like that. She only sets high expectations for the people she values. Don't feel too much pressure. Oh dear, this kid looks like he's going to turn gray from stress. Eleanor really is something, just dumping such a difficult problem on him. But then again, he looks really handsome when he's focused. Those side profile lines are just perfect. I clear my throat, taking a bubble tea. Thanks, Director Miller. Just call me Sarah, she winked. If you need any help, just ask. I might not have other talents, but I'm always in the loop for company gossip. Ask me. Ask me. I know so much inside info about Phantom Play. For example, their lead designer, he got sidelined because he was fighting with the boss over a woman, and the boss's brother-in-law has connections in the investment department. Sarah Miller's inner voice was practically a mobile gossip broadcast station. My eyes lit up. An opportunity. Sarah, what are your thoughts on this Phantom Play company? I asked casually. Phantom Play? Sarah pulled up a chair and lowered her voice. That company is seriously shady. Let me tell you. For the next half an hour, with Sarah's enthusiastic explanation, talking about work on the surface, spilling gossip in her mind, I finally pieced together the full story. In short, Phantom Play's founder and CEO was an incompetent fool who had forced out the talented chief designer and promoted his useless relatives. And the reason our company's investment department was so adamantly against the acquisition was because one of those useless relatives had a distant cousin who was an assistant director in our investment department. The two sides had conspired to drive down the price, use a shell company to buy out cheaply, and then resell it to Aegis at an inflated price. What a perfect con job. So, the investment department is very firm that Phantom Play has no value, Sarah concluded, with an expression that said, "That's all I can do for you." I nodded, already having a plan. After seeing Sarah off, I started writing furiously. By dusk, I placed a report on Eleanor's desk. She raised an eyebrow, picked it up, and began reading it word for word. My report was simple, with only 2 core points. First, the acquisition was essential, but not the entire company, only its core game IP, and the forced-out chief designer. Second, abandon the tug-of-war with the investment department. Activate Ms. Vance's secret executive fund, bypass normal procedures, and swiftly contact the Phantom Play founder directly. Offer him a price he couldn't refuse, but was still below market expectations, buying the IP and technical patents. Simultaneously, send someone to personally persuade the designer to return. When I wrote executive fund, I did it at great personal risk, because this was another piece of gossip from Sarah Miller's inner voice. Eleanor had a discretionary fund, kept secret from the board, to handle emergency situations. It was the company's top secret. Eleanor's expression grew more serious. When she saw the words executive fund, her fingers tightened around the report, her knuckles turning white. She looked up, staring at me, her eyes gathering a storm. He knew that too. Impossible. No more than 3 people in the entire company know about this fund. Who is this guy? How did he know? This time, her inner voice wasn't just surprise. It was genuine, bone-chilling fear. I felt the temperature in the office drop to freezing. I could even hear my teeth chattering. I messed up. I really messed up this time. I shouldn't have revealed all my cards. Touching upon her core secrets wasn't just about talent anymore. It was a threat. Ethan, Eleanor's voice was cold as ice. You'd better have a reasonable explanation. If he can't explain this, today will be the last day of his career. No, perhaps the last day of his life. I was scared out of my mind. Seriously, ma'am, isn't that a bit much? I'm just an employee. How could I explain? Say I heard it, then Sarah will be done for. Say I guessed. No one would believe I could guess something so confidential. My mind went blank, cold sweat trickling down my forehead. Seeing my ashen face, the coldness in Eleanor's eyes deepened. Just at this critical moment, my damnable, opinionated mind-reading ability once again inconveniently chimed in. But this time, it wasn't from Eleanor nor Sarah. It was from downstairs, a voice filled with resentment and unwillingness, fragmented, drifted into my mind. Why? Why does my life's work have to be ruined by that scumbag and his girlfriend? Why isn't Aegis Corporation here yet? If they don't come soon, my baby will be sold to those bastards. The voice was unfamiliar, but the words life's work, scumbag, and Aegis Corporation instantly made me think of one person. Liam O'Connell, the chief designer who had been forced out of Phantom Play. He was downstairs. A stroke of genius hit me. A plan worthy of an Oscar-winning actor instantly formed. I didn't answer Eleanor's question. Instead, I suddenly adopted a sorrowful, empathetic expression and sighed deeply. Ms. Vance, do you believe in fate? I began, in a dramatic, almost poetic tone. Eleanor? Question mark. What game is he playing now? I slowly walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, extending my finger to point at a tiny ant-like figure far below. Just now, I saw that man, pacing downstairs for the entire afternoon. His eyes were filled with resentment, pain, and a glimmer of hope. Looking at him, it was like looking at myself, an idealist whose talents are unrecognized, utterly beaten down by reality. I don't know who he is, but I could feel his despair. So I started to wonder what kind of person would use this method to send a silent cry to this cold, towering Aegis building. Combining that with the documents you gave me, a bold assumption formed in my mind. He is the soul of Phantom Play, the exiled designer. And my entire proposal, Ms. Vance, was based on this chance encounter and empathy. As for the executive fund, Ms. Vance, a person who genuinely wants to accomplish something will inevitably have a hidden ace up their sleeve. I merely gambled that you had one, and gambled that you would dare to use it. Fortunately, I gambled correctly. I finished, looking back at Eleanor with a melancholy. I am simply a sensitive genius. What can you do? Expression. Eleanor followed my finger down and indeed saw the man pacing back and forth by the flower bed downstairs. She fell completely silent. She looked at the man downstairs, then back at me. The storm in her eyes gradually subsided, replaced by an unprecedented shock and bewilderment. So, that's how it is. He didn't rely on some spy tactics, but on a beast-like intuition and insight into human nature. He can feel a stranger's predicament and, based on that, construct an entire business plan. This isn't something a normal person can do. This is a miracle. I actually suspected him, even thought about firing him. I truly was blind. Eleanor's inner voice, for the first time, showed self-doubt. On the surface, I was calm and collected, but inside, I was utterly exhausted. Thank you, God. Thank you, unknown man downstairs. You, Eleanor's voice was a bit dry. Go down now and bring him up. No, I'll go myself. She grabbed her jacket, clicked her heels, and walked decisively toward the door. Passing by me, she paused, giving me a deep look. Ethan, you're something else. Something else. In a terrifying way. I watched her retreating back, let out a long breath, and my legs went weak, almost collapsing to the floor. Working for the Ice Queen was truly exhilarating. Forever since the downstairs rescue incident, my status in the company had undergone a subtle shift. David Peterson's gaze, my manager, went from this kid's got something to what kind of deity has descended to earth. Every time he saw me, he'd nod deferentially, and his tea was always stronger than his own. Sarah Miller's gaze, meanwhile, transformed from promising young hotshot to walking hormone. Every time she brought me documents, she was dressed to the nines, and her perfume was strong enough to knock me over. And Eleanor, her attitude towards me was the most complex. She stopped testing me with difficult problems and truly treated me as a right-hand man. She brought me to all core company meetings. For some confidential decisions, she would even symbolically ask for my opinion. Of course, I knew that her asking for my opinion was really her wanting to hear what earth-shattering business philosophy I could interpret from her absurd inner thoughts this time. I felt like an imperial eunuch whose sole job was to interpret the emperor's dreams, dancing on the edge of a blade every day. One day, the company held its annual strategy meeting with all executives present. The atmosphere in the conference room was serious. Data scrolled across the PPT slides, and department heads passionately reported on their work and projected the future. I sat behind Eleanor, idly twirling my pen. These meetings, for me, were like a grand symphony of inner thoughts. Who's paying for lunch? I paid last time. It should be Mark's turn now, right? Sales director. The new secretary has really long legs. Wonder if she has a boyfriend. Marketing director. When is this damn meeting going to end? I have a hair appointment. Finance director. Listening to these utterly irrelevant inner thoughts, and then seeing them on stage, looking so dignified and pontificating about the future, I felt like the world was truly absurd. Ethan, what are your thoughts? Eleanor suddenly turned and asked me. I jolted, quickly sitting up straight. On stage, Marcus Thorne, the head of R&D, had just finished presenting his department's ambitious plans for next year, investing heavily in developing a brand new, groundbreaking social media application aimed at disrupting the existing market. All the executives had nodded approvingly. Eleanor, however, remained impassive, her expression unreadable. But I heard it. More grand promises. That project last year lost $30 million, and now he wants to launch something even bigger? Does he think my money grows on trees? A social media app? The market is already so saturated, and he wants to jump in? Does he want to fail faster? Eleanor's mind was tearing the proposal to shreds. I understood. She wanted me to be the bad guy. I stood up, cleared my throat, and everyone's eyes in the conference room focused on me. I believe this proposal is highly ill-advised, I stated directly. Marcus Thorne's face immediately fell. Oh, does Assistant Reed have some profound insights? He asked, with a thin, unsmiling facade. No profound insights, sir. I walked to the front, picked up the remote, and pointed to a word on the PPT disrupt. Mr. Thorne, you used the word disrupt 13 times, redefine 8 times, and make history 5 times. Your PPT is well made and very passionate. But with all due respect, this feels more like a motivational sales pitch than a rigorous business plan. Marcus Thorne's face turned red with anger. I ignored him and continued. Let's talk reality. The current social media market is already a bloodbath. User habits are ingrained, and dominant applications hold over 90% of the market share. As a latecomer, how do we compete with them? With more funding? We can't outspend them. With superior technology? Where are our technological advantages? Most importantly, I swept my gaze across the room, articulating each word. Why are we even getting into social media? Aegis's core business is in real estate and investment. Social media is not in our DNA. This is like asking a world boxing champion to compete in Olympic synchronized swimming. No matter how strong he is, he's bound to drown. Our focus should be on excelling in our areas of expertise, not blindly chasing trends only to fall flat on our faces when the hype dies. When I finished, the conference room was silent. Marcus Thorne's face was ashen, and the other executives had varied expressions. Some were pensive, others glared at me, the young punk. Well said. That was so satisfying. I wanted to say that for ages, but I never dared. This was David Peterson's inner voice. This kid's got guts, but he actually makes a lot of sense. R&D has been getting a little too big for its britches these past few years. This was the finance director's inner voice. Damn it, where did this greenhorn come from? Daring to contradict me? Don't let me get a chance, or I'll make his life hell. This was Marcus Thorne's resentful inner thought. Feeling the complex emotions from all directions, I felt a bit intimidated. I had definitely made an enemy of the R&D department today. I secretly glanced at Eleanor. She remained expressionless, but her inner thoughts were jubilant. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This kid is my voice. Boxing champion in synchronized swimming. That analogy is perfect. I'll give him a raise when we get back. No, double his salary. With the Queen's affirmation, I suddenly felt emboldened. I straightened my back and met Marcus Thorne's murderous glare with a faint smile. The final outcome of the meeting was that Eleanor, citing the need for further deliberation, temporarily shelved the money-burning social media project. After the meeting, as I was packing up to leave, Marcus Thorne, the R&D director, blocked my cubicle. Assistant Reed, quite the rising star, aren't you? He clapped my shoulder with a force that made me wince. You flatter me, Mr. Thorne, I said with a polite smile, already mentally calculating which window would offer the best chance of survival if I had to jump. You just wait, kid. Don't think Eleanor protecting you means you can do whatever you want. There are plenty of people at Aegis who'd love to take you down. Marcus Thorne's inner voice was thick with menace. He didn't say anything more, just sneered and walked away. I watched his retreating back, feeling a chill run down mine. It seemed the corporate politics drama was about to officially begin. Just as I was consumed with worry, Eleanor's internal line rang. Come in my office. I walked into the CEO's office with trepidation. Eleanor was standing by the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the bustling city below. "Thank you for today," she said abruptly. I was momentarily stunned before realizing she was referring to the meeting. "It's just part of my job. Many people wanted to say those things, but only you dared to." She turned and looked at me. "Aren't you afraid of making enemies?" Could I say I was scared shitless? But I couldn't. My genius persona shouldn't include the word fear. I pondered for a moment, then, adopting a melancholic pose, looking up at the ceiling at a 45-degree angle, said, "If speaking the truth requires courage, then the sorrow of this world is far deeper than I imagined. I simply don't want Aegis, this great ship, to stray off course due to some misguided ambitions." Every time I said something so pretentious, I wanted to slap myself, but I couldn't let my persona crumble. Eleanor quietly watched me, her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't decipher. He's always like this, seeing through everything more clearly than anyone, living more purely than anyone. In this commercial world driven by fame and profit, he's like an anomaly. Solitary and clear-headed anomaly. I used to think I was the most solitary one. Turns out, there's someone else like me. Her inner voice, for the first time, carried a hint of softness and resonance. My heart stirred, a little unsettled. As for Marcus Thorne, Eleanor broke the silence, resuming her queenly demeanor. "You don't need to worry. In my company, no one dares to touch my people." The words "my people" were said casually, yet carried an undeniable, possessive authority. My heart, for no reason, skipped a beat. This idiot, he makes enemies and doesn't even realize it. Looks like I'll have to keep him close by from now on, or he'll get himself sold off without even knowing. I lower my head, a faint smile curling on my lips. Perhaps being the voice for the Ice Queen wasn't so bad after all. 5 days flew by in a blur of mind-reading puzzles and corporate power plays. Thanks to my unreliable mind-reading and Eleanor's over-analytical trust, I was thriving at Aegis. I helped her foresee a key partner's betrayal because I heard him mentally planning how to abscond with funds. I helped her discern the immense potential of a new product because I heard test users screaming internally, "Buy it! Buy it!" I even helped her expose a competitor's corporate spy because the guy was silently rehearsing our company's Wi-Fi password as he walked past me. My reputation at the company had soared from the CEO's golden boy to Aegis's modern-day Oracle and a walking business radar. Only I knew I was just a lucky guy with a ridiculous inner thoughts cheat code. This feeling of loneliness at the top made me walk on eggshells every day. My biggest fear was that my cheat code would fail one day, or Eleanor would discover I was just a plain, ordinary guy. And that day seemed to be fast approaching. Aegis Corporation's annual charity gala was scheduled for next week. It was a high society event, a crucial platform for major companies to showcase their strength and image. Eleanor, as the host, was naturally the center of attention, and I, as her assistant, was expected to attend with her. Here's the gala itinerary and guest list. Familiarize yourself with it. Eleanor handed me a gilded booklet. I took it, opened it, and my head instantly swelled. The list was filled with names I'd only ever seen in finance magazines, each worth billions, with intimidating titles. "What I need to do?" I asked. "Stay with me, and don't embarrass me." Eleanor was succinct. "Don't screw up, especially with that old fox, Richard Sterling. He's definitely going to make trouble." Richard Sterling, I found the name on the list, chairman of Sterling Group, Aegis Corporation's biggest competitor. A wolf in sheep's clothing, known for his ruthless tactics. It seemed this gala would be a trap. On the night of the gala, I wore a rented, high-end suit and followed Eleanor into the glittering ballroom. The moment Eleanor entered, she captivated everyone's gaze. Dressed in a black evening gown, she was noble and aloof, like a black rose blooming on a snowy mountain peak, beautiful in a way that discouraged approach. "These heels are killing me. I just want to be barefoot. This dress is a bit tight. I can barely breathe. I'm so hungry. Those little cakes on the table look delicious." Listening to Her Majesty's true inner musings, I suppressed a smile and maintained a professional expression. The networking began. Men in suits, one after another, approached with drinks, uttering compliments, but their minds were filled with their own agendas. "Eleanor looks stunning tonight. If I could just get her, Aegis would be mine." Aegis has too much momentum lately. I need to find a way to trip her up. Who's that pretty boy next to her? He's an eyesore. Listening to these thoughts, thick with greed, jealousy, and malice, I felt like I'd fallen into a pit. I smiled politely, while mentally sending curses to their ancestors. Eleanor navigated the crowd with practiced ease, an impeccable business smile on her face. Finally, the main event arrived. A man in his 50s, slightly overweight, with a jolly, Buddha-like smile, approached with a drink in hand. Ms. Vance, long time no see. You're looking more radiant than ever, Richard Sterling said with a chuckle. You flatter me, Mr. Sterling. Eleanor raised her glass. Little girl, you're still too green to contend with me. Today, I'm going to humiliate you in public. My heart tightened. I knew the main act was about to begin. Sure enough, after a few pleasantries, Richard Sterling's tone shifted, his voice not too loud, not too soft, but just loud enough for everyone around to hear. Ms. Vance, I hear you've recently acquired the assistance of a true prodigy, someone with a Midas touch, who makes everything turn to gold. Who is this hero, I wonder? Could you introduce him to us? His words, overtly complimentary, were secretly putting Eleanor and me on the spot. All eyes fell on me. Eleanor's gaze subtly darkened. I was the target. If I performed well, I'd overshadow my boss. If I performed poorly, I'd embarrass Aegis and Eleanor. Richard Sterling was indeed an old fox. Mr. Sterling, you jest. Eleanor calmly stepped slightly in front of me. The talent of my company is all nurtured within Aegis. There are no prodigies, only a group of dedicated individuals willing to fight for the company. Oh, is that so? Richard Sterling smiled, even wider. I've heard that Assistant Reed possesses uncanny abilities, able to predict the future and see through deception. With so many business peers here today, why don't we ask Assistant Reed to give us a demonstration and open our eyes? This was a blatant provocation and a power play. A ripple of eager anticipation spread through the crowd. I felt like I was on an execution block. Eleanor's face had gone cold. I could feel her hand tightening around her wine glass. Richard Sterling, that old bastard. What does he want? To make Ethan look bad? Does he think Ethan is some kind of circus act? What do I do? Ethan definitely can't handle this kind of public confrontation. He's a theorist, not a debater. Should I just lose my temper? No, that would play right into his hands. Eleanor's inner thoughts, for the first time, were filled with urgency and worry. And that worry, surprisingly, was for me. A sudden warmth spread through my chest. All this time, I had been protecting her with my mind reading, playing the role of her guardian angel. But at this moment, I realized that she, too, was clumsily protecting me in her own way. I couldn't hide behind her any longer. I took a deep breath, stepped out from behind Eleanor, stood beside her, and faced Richard Sterling directly. Mr. Sterling, you're too kind, I said with a smile, my voice not loud, but clear enough to be heard throughout the room. I'm no prodigy, nor do I possess uncanny abilities. I'm just an ordinary person who believes in logic and details. Oh, Richard Sterling narrowed his eyes. Then Assistant Reed, why don't you tell us what details allowed you to discern Sterling Group's next strategic move? He dug an even bigger hole for me. If I guessed correctly, it would be corporate espionage. If I guessed wrong, it would be public humiliation. Everyone held their breath, waiting for me to make a fool of myself. Eleanor's nails were almost digging into her palms. I looked at Richard Sterling's smiling face, but his most recent fleeting thought echoed clearly in my mind. I really need to use the restroom later. The seafood I had for lunch wasn't fresh, and my stomach's a bit upset. Damn it. Hope I don't mess up at a crucial moment. Seafood? Upset stomach? I smiled. Fate was on my side. Mr. Sterling, strategic moves are corporate secrets, and I naturally cannot speak out of turn, I said slowly. However, I can, from certain physiological details, analyze your recent physical condition. Richard Sterling paused. What do you mean? Mr. Sterling, your complexion today is somewhat sallow, your lips are pale, and while your eyes are sharp, the pupils deep within seem a bit unfocused. When speaking to others, your left hand unconsciously rests on your lower abdomen, and your body's center of gravity shifts slightly to one side. As I spoke, I subtly mimicked his small gestures. Richard Sterling's smile froze on his face. This suggests that you've been experiencing some gastrointestinal discomfort recently, and your digestive system is having issues. I would boldly surmise that you might have eaten some not-so-fresh seafood for lunch today. The entire room erupted in murmurs. Richard Sterling's face instantly went from white to red, then from red to green, a spectacular display of emotions. He never imagined I would deviate from the script, not discussing business, but rather his health. How? How'd he know? No one knew I ate seafood for lunch. Is he really psychic? Richard Sterling's mind was in turmoil. I didn't give him a chance to react and pressed on. Mr. Sterling, the business world is like a battlefield, and health is the foundation of revolution. Sterling Group is a corporate behemoth, and it cannot function without your steady hand. If a bit of unfresh seafood were to cause your entire organization's digestive system to go awry, that would be a tremendous loss. My words had a double meaning. Ostensibly, I was concerned about his health, but subtly, I was warning him not to sabotage his own company, digestive system, with some shady tactics, unfresh seafood. The surrounding guests were all sharp operators. They couldn't possibly miss my hidden meaning. Suddenly, their gazes toward Richard Sterling became tinged with amusement. Cold sweat beaded on Richard Sterling's forehead. He wanted to refute me, but found he couldn't utter a single word, because everything I said was spot on. He looked at me, and for the first time, fear showed in his eyes. I'm not feeling well. Please excuse me. Richard Sterling could no longer hold it together. Clutching his stomach, he awkwardly squeezed through the crowd, heading straight for the restroom, under the guests' peculiar stares. A crisis, defused in the most absurd way possible. The ballroom fell silent for a moment, then erupted in thunderous applause. Those who had just been eager to see me fail now looked at me as if I were a deity, their applause filled with awe and flattery. I stood there, basking in this unearned glory, yet feeling a strange emptiness. A cool hand suddenly clasped mine. I turned my head and met Eleanor's astonishingly bright eyes. Her face still held a trace of lingering shock, but more than that, there was a sense of pride. Well done, she whispered in my ear amidst the applause. Her warm breath caressed my earlobe, sending a shiver down my spine. This idiot, he scared me half to death. But the way he stood in front of me just now, it was actually pretty cool. Why is my heart beating so fast? Eleanor's inner thoughts, like a pebble dropped into a lake, sent ripples spreading through my heart. I looked at her face, so close to mine. Her icy demeanor, under the glittering lights, seemed to have melted a corner, revealing a trace of captivating tenderness. My heart, too, began to beat uncontrollably faster. I was done for. I think I was starting to have some inappropriate thoughts about my Ice Queen boss. After the charity gala, my relationship with Eleanor became even more nuanced. There seemed to be an unspoken understanding between us, something I couldn't quite define. She no longer deliberately tested me with challenges, and I grew accustomed to anticipating her needs from her off-kilter inner thoughts before she even spoke. She'd frown, and I'd know her coffee wasn't to her liking, immediately heading to that amazing pour-over place for a fresh one. She'd sigh, and I'd know her fantasy drama had upset her again, silently handing her dessert. She'd tap her desk, and I'd know some executive had irked her, volunteering to play the bad guy. My job, from executive assistant, gradually morphed into her personal interpreter and emotional stabilizer. David Peterson and Sarah Miller watched, inwardly fretting. Ethan, that kid, why is he so dense? Eleanor clearly has feelings for him. Why doesn't he get it? This was David Peterson's exasperated inner thought. Oh my, is my young stud, or wolf, going to be snatched by the Ice Queen? No, I have to help him out. This was Sarah Miller's gossip-fueled cry. So my office started accumulating all sorts of strange things. Ethan, these are walnuts from my hometown. Good for the brain. You've been overthinking lately. Eat more. David Peterson placed a 2-pound bag of walnuts on my desk, speaking earnestly. You are what you eat, so get that brain working and figure out Eleanor's feelings. Ethan, here are 2 tickets to a new movie. My friend gave them to me, but I'm too busy. It'd be a shame to waste them, so you take them. Sarah Miller slipped the tickets into my hand, smiling like a fox. It's a romantic movie, too. I've done all I can for you, kid. I looked at the walnuts and movie tickets, both amused and frustrated. I wanted to get it. But the problem was, the person I was supposed to get was Eleanor. The ice queen who could make the entire company tremble if she was in a bad mood. Confessed to her, I was afraid I'd be thrown off the top floor before I could even utter the first word. I had tried to test the waters once. I mustered up the courage to ask her, Ms. Vance, what do you think of me as a person? She was looking down at documents and replied without looking up, You're all right. But what I heard was, what do I think of him? Well, aside from being a little dumb, a little slow, a little clueless when it comes to romance, he's moderately good-looking, and his workability is barely acceptable. Oh, and the coffee he gets me is pretty good. Me? Thank you very much. My few virtues are merely barely acceptable. Huh. The small spark that had just ignited in me was instantly extinguished by the hailstones in her mind. Forget it. I'd just stick to being her assistant. At least the pay was good, the perks were decent, and I didn't have to worry about getting fired. However, even when you want peace, trouble finds you. Marcus Thorne, the R&D director whose pride I'd publicly wounded, never gave up trying to make trouble for me. He knew Eleanor was protective of me, so he didn't dare act openly, but he started tripping me up in the shadows. A project I was managing suffered delays because he deliberately held back technical support. A report I submitted was nitpicked by his people, finding a bunch of irrelevant formatting issues and sending it back for me to redo. Even my ordered lunch was mysteriously swapped several times. These petty annoyances were irritating but didn't cause any substantial harm. I just kept one eye open, too lazy to bother with him. Until that day, Aegis Corporation had a video conference with a crucial overseas client to discuss a contract worth over $100 million. Eleanor took it very seriously, asking me to prepare all relevant technical documents and presentation slides a day in advance and to check them repeatedly. The meeting was set for 3 p.m. At 2:50 p.m., I went to copy the final version of the presentation to the conference room computer. However, when I inserted my flash drive, a glaring red warning box popped up on the screen. Virus detected, file corrupted. My mind buzzed, a blank void. My hands trembling, I pulled out the flash drive and tried again. Same result. I then plugged it into my own computer. All the files had turned into scrambled nonsense. It felt as if all the blood had drained from my body. This wasn't just a file. This involved a $100 million contract, Aegis's reputation. Less than 10 minutes until the meeting started. There was no time to recreate the presentation. Only one thought echoed in my mind. I'm finished. I sank into the chair, my hands and feet icy cold. What's wrong? Eleanor's voice came from the doorway. She had changed into her formal attire, ready for the meeting. I looked up, my face ashen, my lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Eleanor saw the flash drive on my desk and the scrambled text on the computer screen. She instantly understood. Her face also darkened. Backup? She asked calmly. None. I managed to stammer out. To maintain confidentiality, this final version of the document only existed on this flash drive. Eleanor's eyes were cold as ice. I could feel a terrifying rage ignite within her. But this time, it wasn't directed at me. Marcus Thorne. It has to be him. Besides him, no one else has the motive, nor the opportunity. Okay, Fina, daring to play these games right under my nose. I looked at her, filled with despair and guilt. Ms. Vance, I'm so sorry, it's my fault. Now is not the time for that. She cut me off, her voice devoid of blame, only an astonishing composure. There are 7 minutes until the meeting. You, right now, immediately, tell me all the core data and key arguments you can remember. What? I was stunned. If I don't have a PPT, does that mean I can't speak? She walked up to me, looking directly into my eyes. You are my assistant, my brain. Now, linear brain. Her gaze was filled with an undeniable trust. In this life-or-death situation, she didn't blame me, didn't get angry. Instead, she chose to trust me, to rely on me. My nose stung, and my eyes instantly welled up. Yes, I nodded forcefully. For the next 5 minutes, I practically shouted, cramming every piece of data, every chart, every analysis, every argument I could recall into her. My speaking speed was astonishing, my brain working at an unprecedented pace. Eleanor listened silently, not interrupting, simply memorizing everything at lightning speed. The most crucial part is the profit-sharing model for the third phase. We must maintain a baseline of 30% because time's up. Eleanor cut me off, turning to leave. I watched her determine back, my heart sinking to rock bottom. It was too rushed. It was impossible to remember so much. This meeting was doomed. I slumped in my chair, awaiting the inevitable judgment. I don't know how much time passed. The office door opened. Eleanor walked in, her face unreadable. I didn't dare to look at her, my head down, like a condemned man awaiting his sentence. The contract is signed. She said 3 words, simply. I snapped my head up, unable to believe my ears. Sign, sign, yes. She walked in front of me, looking down. The client was very satisfied. They said it was the most brilliant impromptu presentation they had ever witnessed. My mouth hung open, speechless. She actually did it, without any materials, solely relying on my 5-minute emergency brief. She had secured a $100 million contract. What incredible memory and ability to think on her feet. Ms. Vance, I was so excited, words failed me. It was you, she interrupted. You remembered everything. I was just the reciter. She looked at me, a genuine smile in her eyes, one I had never seen before. This idiot, he seems so clueless normally, but he's actually quite dependable in a crisis. Just now, with his eyes red, he looked like a bullied rabbit. It was actually kind of cute. My face instantly flushed. Goo. She actually used cute to describe me? As for the flash drive incident, Eleanor's eyes instantly turned cold. I've already had the IT department investigate. If someone did this, I promise, they will regret ever being born. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I knew Marcus Thorne's end was near. And I, looking at this woman who had just held up my entire world, felt something inside me completely collapse. I didn't want to be her voice or her interpreter anymore. I wanted to stand beside her, not as a subordinate, but as a man. Seven Marcus Thorne's fate was grim. The IT department quickly recovered a small piece of operational data from the corrupted flash drive, pointing to an internal server in the R&D department. Eleanor didn't give him a chance to explain. That afternoon, Marcus Thorne was escorted out of the company by security. Immediately afterward, Aegis's legal department sent him a lawyer's letter, charging him with leaking trade secrets and maliciously damaging company property. What awaited him was not only enormous compensation, but also jail time. The entire company was shaken. Everyone once again witnessed the Ice Queen's iron grip. And I, Ethan Reed, as the direct victim and hero of this incident, saw my status soar, unmatched by anyone. But I couldn't bring myself to be happy, because I noticed Eleanor had started avoiding me. She no longer called me into her office for reports, opting for internal emails instead. She no longer asked me to accompany her to meetings, sending David Peterson instead. Even her daily coffee, she had the admin department buy it, despite the bitter taste making her frown every time. It was as if an invisible wall had risen between us. I was completely at a loss, until one day, I was taking some documents to her for signature, and at her door, I overheard her conversation with Sarah Miller. "What's wrong with you lately? Why are you always avoiding Ethan?" That was Sarah Miller's voice. Eleanor was silent for a moment before speaking, her voice tinged with weariness. "I don't know how to face him." "What do you mean?" "Sarah, let me ask you. If there was someone who could see through all your thoughts, your joys and sorrows, your secrets, your pretenses, nothing hidden from him, what would you do?" My heart plummeted. "That would be terrifying, wouldn't it?" Sarah Miller exclaimed. "It'd be like being naked in front of him. No sense of security at all." "Exactly." Eleanor's voice was filled with bitterness. "No sense of security at all." I stood outside the door, utterly cold. So, she had figured out. My uncanny foresight, my insight into human nature, had instilled fear in her. She wasn't avoiding me. She was afraid of me. Afraid of me. This monster who could see through her every facade. I had always thought my mind reading was my cheat code, my bridge to her. Now, I realized it was also an insurmountable chasm. When secrets were no longer secrets, when pretenses were completely torn away, what remained wasn't intimacy, but fear and rejection. Disheartened, I returned to my cubicle, feeling a disgust for my own ability for the first time. What do I do? What should I do? I think. I've started to fall for that idiot. But I can't. I can't be with someone who can see right through me. That's too terrifying. Eleanor's confused and painful inner thoughts drifted intermittently, like a dull knife repeatedly cutting into my heart. You like me? This answer, which I had yearned for, now brought me unprecedented pain. The barrier between us wasn't status, wasn't position, but my damned mind reading. Unless I lost it. A crazy idea began to take root in my mind. Over the next few days, I frantically studied my mind-reading ability. I discovered that when I was extremely fatigued, mentally exhausted, its effectiveness would drop significantly, sometimes even failing completely. So, I started to torment myself. I stayed up for 3 days and 3 nights straight, working overtime, leaving myself dizzy and pale. David Peterson and Sarah Miller were terrified, thinking I had developed PTSD from the Marcus Thorne incident. Ethan, don't do anything drastic. Your health is your most important asset. Ethan, if you keep this up, I'm going to tell Eleanor. I just shook my head, continuing to numb myself with a mountain of files and data. Finally, on the morning of the 4th day, as I carried coffee into Eleanor's office, I realized the world was silent. I couldn't hear anything. Couldn't hear her mentally complaining about the coffee. Couldn't hear her internally agonizing over which heels to wear today. Couldn't hear any of her thoughts. My mind reading was gone. In that moment, what surged through me wasn't loss, but an unprecedented sense of lightness and liberation. I had finally returned to being an ordinary person. Ms. Vance, your coffee. I placed the coffee on her desk, my voice a bit hoarse from exhaustion. Eleanor looked up, seeing my haggard appearance, her brows furrowed tightly. What happened to you? Her voice held a trace of imperceptible concern and sympathy. I didn't know what she was thinking. This feeling was unfamiliar and also fair. I smiled faintly and said, "Nothing, just haven't been sleeping well lately." She stared at me for a long time, so long I thought she was about to start analyzing me again. But she just sighed. "Don't work today. Go home and rest," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "But that's an order." I could only nod, turning to leave. "Ethan," she suddenly called out. I turned back. She looked at me, her eyes complex, as if she wanted to say something but held back. I waited quietly, a little nervous. Without my mind reading, I couldn't guess what she wanted to say. "Never mind. Just go home." In the end, she said nothing, waving her hand. I walked out of the office, feeling a pang of disappointment. Perhaps, without the prodigy aura, I was just an ordinary subordinate in her eyes. That's fine. This way, at least she wouldn't be afraid of me anymore. I dragged my exhausted body home, collapsing onto my bed and sleeping for an entire day and night. When I returned to the company, I was completely refreshed. The world was still quiet. I started working like a true executive assistant. I could no longer predict Eleanor's needs in advance. I had to observe her expressions, gauge her tone, to infer her mood. I was no longer all-knowing. I had to rely on my own logic and effort to complete every task she assigned. I made many mistakes. I bought her the wrong coffee. She frowned but drank it without a word. I failed to grasp her subtle hints during a meeting, making her elaborate further. I had oversights in the documents I prepared and was chastised by her without mercy. I had returned to being Ethan Reed, the ordinary employee who made mistakes and got scolded. But I noticed Eleanor didn't distance herself from me because of it. On the contrary, when she scolded me, she couldn't help but let a small smile quirk her lips. When she taught me things, she was more patient than before. That wall between us seemed to have vanished. We were more like a normal superior and subordinate. One day, after work, Eleanor suddenly said to me, "Join me for dinner." I was stunned. It was the first time she had ever invited me out. We went to a quiet Italian restaurant. In the soft, dim light, her face appeared especially gentle. "Ethan," she asked, cutting her steak, feigning casualness, "you've changed recently." My heart tightened. Have I? Changed to be less clever? She looked up and smiled. It was the first time I'd ever seen such a genuine, radiant smile from her, completely devoid of pretense. "No," she said. "You become more endearing." My heart instantly skipped a beat. The old you was too perfect, too unreal. She put down her knife and fork, looking at me seriously. You seem to know everything, see through everything. Honestly, I was a little afraid of you. And now? I asked nervously. Now? She looked at me, her eyes sparkling like starlight. Now? You make mistakes, you get nervous, you're sometimes at a loss. You're flesh and blood, like a real person. So, I like the current you much more. My mind went blank. Happiness arrived so suddenly, it almost took my breath away. I looked at her, my lips moving, wanted to say something. Just then, a voice I knew to my very core, cool and with a hint of haughtiness, suddenly, clearly exploded in my mind. This idiot, I've given him so many hints. Why hasn't he confessed yet? Does he expect me, a woman, to make the first move? It's driving me crazy. Me, my mind reading, it was back. When I was mentally refreshed at my peak it had returned. I looked at Eleanor's face, which read, I am elegant, I am patient, and then heard her mind's frantic roar of, if you don't confess now, I'm flipping this table. An unprecedented mix of exhilaration and uncontrollable laughter surged through me simultaneously. Turns out, all my struggles and pain, in her eyes, were a completely different sight. Turns out, what I thought was an insurmountable chasm was merely a thin pane of glass. I couldn't hold back anymore. To her astonished face, I burst out laughing. What's so funny? She frowned, her cheeks faintly flushed. I stifled my laughter, took a deep breath, stood up, walked to her, and under the dropped jaws of everyone in the restaurant, leaned down and softly whispered something in her ear. Ms. Vance, I heard that. Her body stiffened abruptly, her pupils instantly dilating. You heard what? Her voice trembled. I looked at her flustered eyes, the smile on my lips growing wider. I heard someone wants me to take responsibility for her. Eleanor's face, at a visible speed, flushed from her ears down to her neck. That perennial iceberg, at this moment, completely melted, turning into a pool of scorching lava. She glared at me, mortified and furious, yet unable to utter a single word. I straightened up, extended my hand to her, smiling like a fool who had won the entire world. So, Ms. Eleanor Vance, will you give me the chance to take responsibility for you? Bonus scene. A year later, Aegis Corporation CEO's office. Ethan was reviewing documents. Eleanor walked over and hugged him from behind. Honey, what are you busy with? Just looking at next quarter's financial reports. Ethan didn't look up. Eleanor rested her chin on his shoulder, asking casually, oh, by the way, is your mind reading still there? Ethan's body stiffened slightly, then he chuckled. Nope, long gone. Hasn't come back since that last time. Why? Oh, nothing, just asking. Eleanor's tone sounded very casual. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief and continued looking at his documents. However, what he didn't know was that a sly smile was playing on Eleanor's lips. A voice, one only she could hear, echoed in her mind. Humph, little rascal, trying to fool me. You think you're the only one with mind reading. Sorry, my queen. Has it too, and it seems to be a more advanced version than yours, darling. And